intentional, but really that creates an atmosphere where we inherently have, and create an atmosphere acceptable to address it. And as a leader, go in front, and if you experience frog mentality or bias toward women or other groups, then you actually have an opportunity to address it, and you have a responsibility to address it and handle it. I think there's a fantastic opportunity there if you talk to your team, to the young people in the organization, and encourage them to actually call out if they experience bias, whether by me or somebody else. And if you have an atmosphere and environment where that's okay, that really helps. So it's not to say that it's the young people's responsibility necessarily, but they actually are better at spotting the blind spots that we all have than I and other senior people are. So creating that environment where it's okay to step up and call a bias, that I think will also help. And it will show that we are all willing to change and improve on these points, which is important.
I think on that note, there's actually a bias toolkit on the like a toolkit on the IBA website if you want to do a test at your firm. It was done by, I think it was an exercise Christina Blacklaw, I think when she was the president of the Law Society in the UK. She went around the world to do roundtables for women, and one of the top response there was about unconscious bias. I mean, I remember even at our firm in Indonesia, if you have a due diligence project in, say, Papua New Guinea, immediately the partner will say which male associate will we send, because it's about safety. You just don't want to send. But you really should open up and kind of have the opportunity for any of the associates that can do the work, kind of put up their hand if they want to travel to Papua or Sulawesi or somewhere. Fine, they do with it, make sure you get safe. But in your head, you're doing the right thing to try to limit, but actually, you're being biased. Let's move on, I guess, in terms of the question about have you been treated differently? Anyway, I was just segueing into treated in your organization when you're in a leadership position. I guess I want to go for each speaker. Maybe I start from the end there, Shamila.
Well, I think we have to treat people.
Sorry, keep on forgetting that. I always think my voice is loud enough to reach you, but that's what I'm usually told. I first of all, there's been a discussion around quotas. I'm going to raise the concept of affirmative action, and it's in the context of South Africa. We've got a legislative program for affirmative action. It's called employment equity. The bottom line is, within proper affirmative action policies, you do have different treatments. You do have to recognize that not everybody is equal in terms of opportunity or ability, and you may end up selecting candidates who don't meet the criteria. And as the former Prime Minister said, the criteria being set for a job by the men. And you have to have systems in place which then will allow people of differing abilities, but clearly with capability, and our women, disadvantaged people, to have access to, particular processes perhaps, or opportunities that will help to upskill them to meet those criteria. So what I'm talking about now are differences that are positive and are necessary differences if you are going to build out your transformation profile. So and then in terms of negative differences, I'm happy to say, although maybe I've got my own unconscious bias, and maybe it's something that I put in the back of my head, but in the last 10 years, I know of no negative experience or any negative, any treatment, differential treatment that was negative in any way. So I'm very fortunate in that respect. But I think you had another issue around, what is the biggest obstacle? I think we've raised it so many times. I think the biggest obstacle is the lack of a centrally driven, leadership-supported drive to improve the leadership profile of women in the firm. In the absence of that approach, in the absence of a directed and highly endorsed approach to promote women, you're not going to achieve those changes. And at the core of it is the institutional support and sponsorship.
Yeah, which I think Dippin touched on earlier as well. But anything else you want to what about yourself, Dippin, in your leadership position? Were there, were you treated differently or in any way?
So, I mean, just to start being treated differently, I, in my London writing case, have been fortunate enough to have different leadership positions. I'm the managing partner of our London office. I used to be the head of our European disputes practice. And I am conscious of the fact that I probably have benefited as a virtue of my ethnicity for having been considered for these roles. And again, I think the issue came up that should you get bothered by the fact that you are being considered for a role because you're a woman or an ethnic minority. I echo the comments of others that you shouldn't. I think if you've been given the opportunity, you serve and do the best you can. On the flip side, have I actually received any negative or unfavorable treatment? I think, funnily enough, it probably not so much of any other factor, but when I got my first leadership role, I was still pretty young, I was in my 30s, and I was managing a group of 40 partners, all of whom were much older than me. And some of them had seen me when I was like a baby associate, which has joined the firm. And you know, I had to do evaluation discussions, I had to do compensation discussions with those partners, and I could certainly feel the tensions. It was more like an age issue than anything else. And I felt that. But also at the same time, right, and I think it's a lesson that I learned early on, is as a leader, you can only control things that are in your control, right? I can't change my age, and I certainly can't change what other people may think of me by virtue of my age. But you also have to look at the positive of the situation, because I remember a lot of associates who I was mentoring at that time who basically said, look, the fact that you have got this leadership opportunity at a young age is actually quite a positive thing for them, because they can see a path where the firm is not very hierarchical and there are opportunities for younger people in the firm. So my takeaway on that was, don't focus on things that you can't control, and try to look at the positive impact rather than any negative issues going on.
I think age discussion is really something that's also big in law firms. But, we never seem to retire. We just continue to become senior partner. Maria, would you like to share?
I think my experience is actually quite similar. I think I've benefited a lot from being a woman, because I think in the end of the day, I wanted women in management. I became managing partner, and well, the age thing, absolutely, I've been there, but it's to a degree. Focus on things you can control. I think one thing I would say is that when I became managing partner, and it was with media intention, I was the first woman in the big firm in Sweden in that role, and also I had quite a lot of I had a network of international firms, managing partners that I knew. I think I was often asked, so what are you going to do about diversity? What are you going to do about, the fact that there are hardly any women? And similarly, I was invited to lots of panels to speak on that topic. And then the other topics, like, so, where are our firms heading in this sort of, this was 2012, quite ambiguous time. Where are we heading in the strategy, in the future? What should our strategy be? What should be the financial parameters we should be focusing on? Those panels are still very white male dominated, and I got to speak about the soft issues. I actually decided quite early on to refuse to do that, because I was a managing partner looking at the firm as a whole, including addressing strategy, finances, profitability, all those things. And I thought it was important to begin with, as I was building my platform as managing partner, to actually be known to do that. I think as the years have gone, especially as the firm has done well, it's become really important to me to speak about diversity. But I do think that it's often the case that you get pigeonholed as a law firm leader who happens to be a woman to talk about that sort of issues. I'm very happy to be on this panel.
Definitely experienced. Yes, Deborah.
So the question, as I remember it, is, have you been treated differently, or can you recall a time? And the answer for me is yes, in every job. So so the only question for me is in those situations, was it because I was a woman, or because I was Black, or because I was a Black woman, right? And so, or is it because it's you? It's you and it's your personality and you just don't fit. So that has always been the way that I have had to approach when I felt that there was a difference in the treatment. And early in my career, it really was the combination of being a woman and being a Black woman. In international arbitration, I think I may have told the story to some, so you can just tune out. But for the rest, when I first started, I was the U.S. representative for the ICC Court of Arbitration, and there were no women on the list of arbitrators, and we had a committee meeting in Paris, and we talked about the boys' club. Well, unbeknownst to me, and this was before internet, so you couldn't Google anything, and this was before cell phones, etc. I went to a meeting at the appointed time at a club in Paris, and they wouldn't let me in. And I thought, gee, my French must be pretty rusty because I'm expected at this meeting and I'm trying to get in. And the man said, yeah, I know what you're saying, but you can't come in. And so there's a moment where I was, 28 years old, thinking, is this because I'm Black or is it because I'm a woman? And then a well-dressed white woman, very well-dressed, she had a Chanel suit on. So I was like, if they're not letting her in, then it's not just me, right? And it turns out that it was a club that was men only. And the organizers, the men with whom I was meeting, had never even thought that this was a male-only club. And so I had to decide, what do I do? They finally said to me, we can let you in, you have to go up to the back, and if for those who understand, when you're Black and going through the back in the kitchen is kind of like verboten, but I decided I would do that. And I came in through the back door, and all the men were sitting there like, why are you coming through the back door? First, they looked at me like because again, before Google, so they just had the name Deborah Enix Ross. That does not sound African American. So, first was you're Deborah Enix Ross look, and then why are you coming through the back? And I explained why, and so at the end of the lunch in solidarity, they all walked through the back and down the steps with me, and we never went to that club again until it was time. So my point is, in every situation for me, at every stage of my career, there's been a challenge, but I always say to myself, you fight the fights you can, when you can, in the ways that you can, for as long as you can, hopefully without having it make you bitter and make you give up.
It's useful.
So when I reflected on this question over the weekend, I think in a leadership position, I haven't really experienced anything treating me differently, but it made me reflect back on 15 years ago when I myself had kids and wanted to take some time off with them, and how the partners back then were sort of frowning on that, and it was really necessary, and they weren't really sure it was a good idea. So it was a tough thing to actually manage to do, and reflecting back on that now and seeing where we are today, I think we've moved a lot on these things. So there has been traditionally a system where men were looked down upon or almost discriminated against for choosing a longer parental leave or even staying at home. And there we've moved a lot as a society and as a firm. I think to now have a situation where we have equal parental leave and actually seeing all the male associates taking it and being supported by their partners. So I think that is a positive statement to something that has moved and actually helps achieve equality in a very good way.
I guess we are almost to the end, and there is a giant here in the middle of the room that is the bias. So we are touching the matter of the bias, and I wanted to say a fascinating topic because bias they are conceived at the very beginning to protect. So there is this wonderful book of Daniel Kahneman, you want to know about it, say, Think Fast, Think Slow, and it reminds us that bias, sometimes they signal like, so at the beginning, a man was asking a primitive man whether you can see a shadow, shall I go, or shall I fight until I stay? But bias, they are unconscious bias vis-a-vis women, now they are a bit too much now. And then how can we fight them? And what are the biases that you see? The more common bias about women lawyers. So, for example, women lawyers, it is around you, and how can we remove it? So, can we start again from a man? It depends. What are the biases that you see about your women around women lawyers?
I think the single biggest bias is this presumption that women are the primary carers of children, and parenting is incompatible or at odds with career progression leadership, right? Because I think the vast majority of people in this hall are at law firms, and law firms still have this antiquated tournament-style promotion structure going back 200 years that you join, and then you have a 10, 12-year track to partner, and then it's sort of make or break, right? And the idea is, again, this whole conventional idea about the women's biological clock and the track partnership and growth and so on and so forth. And I think ultimately, it's already come up that I think law firms have to take a far more progressive approach when it comes to parental leave and shared parental leave for men and women. And then I think there's a larger societal issue as well. And I think, again, in the last 4 to 5 years, I've seen tremendous change. I mean, I think in my team, the number of male associates who are taking lengthy periods of parental leave is tremendous, because the signaling effect of that to other women who are on the partnership track that actually parental leave is not the death level progress, or parenting is incompatible with success at law firms, I think is tremendous. So I think that I still see as one of the biggest biases that is at play, but hopefully making some progress in this respect.
I just turned and then I will ask also the other panelists. Then what are the two main skills or features that you would advise a young partner, women partner, say, in order to be successful here, those are the two skills, the two features and skills you need to train. This is out of the program, but I saw there are many young partners in the audience. So if you are in one case, so one of them, what is you believe is more important for them to train as a quality, as a skill, so to be independent, to be to participate in the firm life. So how would you empower them? Yes, here, and then Jen, we will win.
What specific skills?
Thank you so much. Clearly, I need that particular skill. I don't know that there's any particular skill, but I do want to talk about. I'm sorry, I'm changing this slightly. I just want to go back to the issue of bias, because one of the things that we're all aware of is that typically we see the drop-off. You have the gender representation, women representation at very high levels, above 50%, all the way to senior associate, and then the drop-off when you get to partner. So I think we're talking about statistically. I mean, at Bowman's it's about 34% women representation, and you didn't mention the issue around there's this perception that women are the primary caregivers, but I think the most dangerous thing, and it comes back to the very start of this discussion where I talked about my own personal resistance to taking on the position. It was my own unconscious bias. I didn't think I was up to the job. And I think that is possibly a root cause of why we see that drop from the 60% plus into the partnership, and why women themselves are not promoting themselves in the position is because of the extensive bias that they carry within themselves, and about their ability to lead. And so that means that organizationally, firms have to delve into that. It's not just about the external sponsorship, it's around getting women to believe that they can do it, because that, in my personal experience, has been my biggest obstacle, is my own lack of self-worth. And so in terms of techniques, what can you do to help women? I think it's to give them that core belief, that skill to take confidence within themselves and to fight that imposter syndrome that is always at the back of their heads, and questioning how they got to where they got. Sorry.
Thank you. So coaching could be also a good service for.
Absolutely, definitely coaching. Deborah?
Yeah, so one skill is to remember how you got there, and remember what it took for you to get to that point. And I think it picks up a bit on the imposter syndrome because, it took a long time for me to really be comfortable with, I am where I am, I deserve to be where I am, I earned this place at the table, and no one can take that away from me. And there are those microaggressions that happen that can cause you to doubt yourself. When the former prime minister talked about you have an idea and you say it and people kind of, and then the man says it and everyone agrees. I've been there, and I've gotten to the point now where I say, didn't I just say that? Now, when I was younger, I would have held it in and said, maybe I didn't say it the right way, or he said it a bit more elegantly. And now it's like, forget elegance, I said that, and don't take my credit. So it's important to remember you are where you are there because you earned it. If they picked you because you're the woman, so what, when we talked about affirmative action, I remember in law school, it was at the height of the affirmative action decisions in the US, and people in law school said to me, you're only here because of affirmative action. Like you're taking someone else's spot, somebody white who could be here. And I always said, well, that's okay, I'm not gonna take the affirmative action bar exam. So I still have to learn what you have to learn, and I still have, but it takes a lot to be able to do that and to have that kind of assault and still come out of it. So I think the first thing is to remember, be your authentic self. There's a reason why you were there. There's skills that you bring that are unique, that no one else has, and they need you. You know, it's kind of like when you're dating, it's like, I'm the prize here. You know, you need me, and just keep saying that to yourself even when you don't feel it.
I like that very much. Because it's very important to remind ourselves that we are in a certain position because we deserve it. You are there because you have done a lot. Maria Pia, from you?
I mean, I think on the topic of bias and then something to be aware of, skill to develop, I certainly heard during my, 10, 15 years in central management, the idea, the notion that women, can they really be rainmakers? Can they really sort of create sort of volumes that sustain the firm in a meaningful way? And I have to admit, there was a time that I wondered, well, is that perhaps the case that women aren't as good as men, having this ability to create rain, bring in revenue. And it's been fascinating to see that women, of course, can be rainmakers. They can put in greater volumes than men. and it isn't rocket science. It's about relationships, actually, creating sustainable, good relationships with clients. And I think that's, I don't like talking about sort of female skills, but I do think that that's a skill that women often have. We're interested in people. We're interested in what people are thinking, doing, good at asking questions, good at really trying to get to understand what's actually happening. I think those are fundamental skills to create a good business. So I think that bias that I certainly came across when I was a young partner in management, I have seen, well, I know that it's a fact, women can certainly
contribute financially in a major way to a law firm. And I think that's something that we also need to work on, senior women and men, to make sure that we're transparent on that topic. That's one that we just don't accept.
This is very relevant, and you know that there were several webinars from this committee. They were about women rainmakers, how to get there, because this bias that perhaps is also true, that is to develop abilities to bring business, not just to be cooperative. We call the cooperative partners. That's why I was saying before, in our opinion, being leadership positions, not just being a partner, but what do you do for the firm as a partner? You just have your business, are you on the board, you're not on the board, and then perhaps developing the rainmaker techniques could be also a tool for firms. Andreas?
Yeah, I think it goes back to culture a lot, as was said, and I think most partners still today are like me, white males, who are fairly privileged behind, and so just creating increased awareness about the multitude of unconscious biases that we carry around, that will really help a lot, because people are simply not aware of it, and the more we talk about it, the more we learn about it, the better we will be at seeing it, and also accepting that it needs to be challenged, and how much value diversity can bring.
Okay, so we have we're at the crux of the end of 11:15. Do we have any questions from the floor before we offer? Please.
And my question, because you told us yesterday that as the managing partner of your firm in the entire region, you also receive the applications for remuneration for your partners. And you made a very interesting statement yesterday. May I ask you to repeat that?
Sure. I was sharing over dinner that when my male partners come to the room, they come prepared with Excel sheets, and they already tell me, this is my billings collections, how much profit this is what I deserve. They're very aggressive verbally in terms of what they've achieved. Well, whereas with the women partners, I'm generalizing a bit, they're also very strong verbal women partners in the firm, but most of them will go, thank you, yes, I had a good year, whatever you think that's fair. They don't really fight as hard as the male partners during the appraisal. So one takeaway that we did was training. I think we talk about biases, right? If you do the test, you identify where your biases, sometimes you don't realize them, and then you must provide training, bias training to your partners, so that then when they are in the position of appraising a senior associate, or even another partner, whatever it is, they go into the room knowing the different languages they will speak, male and female. We do have different languages, the way we present ourselves differently. So having that training, go back to your firms, see whether you can go online. There's a lot of this facilities online.
If I can add, there is some wonderful book of Professor Linda Baba, but it's called Why Women Don't Ask. It's a great research, and it says that women, even at senior level of partnership with law firms or in business, women don't ask. This is a bias, because we thought that asking is not nice. So when it comes to the remuneration committee, the example Professor Baba she makes in the book is that male partners, they knock on the door of the members of the committee 3 months in advance, because they want to set what expectations are for the remuneration committee. While women partners, many times, they wait for the letter to come. So they wait for the letter to come, and then it's good or bad. So ask and learn to ask is always a good room for improvement for each of us. So I believe we have said a lot.
Yeah, one more question maybe? No? Okay, I think thank you together with Alisa. I would like to thank our panelists, Shamila, Dipen, Maria, Deborah, and Andreas for joining us and sharing all your insights. I hope you found